The Civil War, amongst the darkest times in American history. Neighbors clashing with neighbors in a crisis to determine the fate of the institution of slavery. It was a gruesome war, yes, but it did not pop out of nowhere. In this deep dive, we will discuss the causes and rank them in ascending order of importance to what really started the war. Our first matchup pits the mitigatory effectiveness of Henry Clay's magnum opus, otherwise known as the Compromise of 1850, versus the shock of Stephen A. Douglas's Kansas-Nebraska Act. Henry Clay's compromise takes the cake as the more impactful of the two, however. The Kansas-Nebraska Act went only as far as to issue a regional Bleeding Kansas issue, and demonstrates a skew of voter bias known as border ruffians. However, the Compromise of 1850 remains more crucial, showing a disregard for previous acts of legislature, the Missouri Compromise, and leaving the issue of slavery in the West up to popular sovereignty. The greatest expansion of slavery since the Missouri Compromise. Next up comes the fiery rebellion of Nat Turner to what most consider the worst Supreme Court decision in history, Dred Scott versus Sanford. Nat Turner's rebellion did little on a macroscopic scale, just strengthening slave laws in the South and scaring slave owners. Dred Scott versus Sanford shook the whole scene of slavery, transforming it legally everywhere, even ruling that any compromises regarding slavery were unconstitutional on the account that the government cannot ban property, which slaves were considered as. For this reason, the Dred Scott decision is vastly more important. On the clash of John Brown's raid versus the Lincoln-Douglas debates, neither is critical macroscopically. John Brown's raid took it by a slim margin because it intensified sectionalism. But the debates between Lincoln and Douglas gave Lincoln valuable exposure. The clash of the titans is up next. The falling of the first domino versus the finger that pushed it. The secession of South Carolina versus the election of Abraham Lincoln. Though Carolina's secession was setting a precedent, Lincoln's election was the root cause. It finalized the sectional divide between North and South, as well as set the South into a panic about slavery. For this reason, Lincoln's election is more important. Into the quick rounds from here on out. No need to explain specifics, just the outcome. Dred Scott's decision matters much more than the Compromise of 1850, because it legalized slavery without the restraint of popular sovereignty everywhere. The next lightning round is the raid on Harper's Ferry versus Lincoln's election. This is a landslide win for Lincoln, as any presidential election overrules a regional affair. Now the finale of it all, legalization versus root cause. Root cause, and by extension, Lincoln's election wins because it ushered in the falling of dominoes that became secession and was the straw that broke the camel's back for sectionalistic divide and the institution of slavery.